Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and welcome to my wish list for 11th edition 40k. As everyone should know, this has been a cycle for a very long time. We're getting 11th edition next year, probably around summertime, probably 10 months from now, um, maybe 9. We'll be getting the new edition. Expect to start seeing teasers around Christmas for what units are going to get updated and things like that, and then we'll get a full reveal for it a little later with a big cinematic and all that. Very exciting, of course. But, of course, with edition changes come changes. I think this is going to be not a full reset edition like 10th was to 9th. I think this is going to be like 8th to 9th, where they refine the system in a lot of meaningful ways. Past me is just setting up a factorial world for background footage. Present me is going to start talking now. First up, one thing I would like to see more of is conditional buffs and abilities for units. Now, as the edition has gone on, these have become much more commonplace. For example, things like Drukhari getting their powers and then getting upgraded from the Pain Token special rule and things like that. Which got revamped in their codex, and Leagues of Votann have special buffs that only apply when you're in one phase of their special rule and another in the other. I'd like to see more of that. I think it is good game design just because it plays into the strengths of a faction, and it rewards you for doing so. As an example, for a faction I played a lot, I think it'd be interesting to give orc units WA abilities, basically. And by WA abilities, I mean, I think they should get a further buff in the WA, which just plays into that sort of snowbally effect that orcs tend to have. So for boys, you could give them perhaps +2 to advance during the WA, or for Killicans to play into that bully mindset that they get into, you could give them like +1 to wound against models that have 3 or less wounds. I think that is just a starting point, things that are off the dome. I think these kind of rules just make armies more fun to play, and I think would be more interesting. And you can pair those with constant buffs like sticky objectives or stealth, like gaining cover or whatever it may be, right? I think having both of these is just the way to go. Moving on to one I'm sure you all knew was coming, we have psychic powers. Do need to make a return, in my opinion. I think it was an interesting idea to put them just on datasheet abilities and make them weapons, but I think it is time to effectively copy Game Workshop's own homework, which I think is very likely given how their other games have developed. In Age of Sigmar and Horus Heresy, of course, psychic powers are handled quite well. In Age of Sigmar, which is the way I less prefer it, every one of your spells is done in the hero phase, which for all you 40k players is the command phase. I think that is a fine approach, because the psychic phase was just unnecessary bit of bloat, effectively. It's because so many factions didn't use it, that having a whole phase dedicated to it was just kind of unnecessary. So I think getting rid of that is completely valid, right? So to say, but they went too far in the other direction. The way I would do it, though, is through the Horus Heresy method, which is just having you use the spells in the phases where they afflict. For example, Telekine Shield from Telekinesis is used in the shooting phase to protect your guys from getting shot at. So, of course, you use it there. And Biomantic Might, which, of course, makes your guys more brawlic, applies in the charging phase. I think that's just the best way to do psychic powers, and I do think it is time to bring that back. I'm sure, Grey Knights players would be very happy about that. I think that's another thing. Grey Knights really got the short end of the stick with the removal of psychic powers, even though I think Thousand Sons got a decent bit out of it. I think it is time to just bring back psychic powers in one of the ways that Games Workshop has already proven they can do quite well in their other game systems. Now, with that out of the way, we're on to our final point, and that is going to be something that I don't think is going to get added, but I really hope it does because it adds a lot of fun to the game, is Surgical Deep Strike. Now, Surgical Deep Strike is a rule introduced in Nachman Gauntlet to mimic the old scattering rules of Deep Strike. You set up your models anywhere outside of 3 inches of enemies, which might sound like many rules we have, like Inceptors or Tempestus Aquilons, But the difference is this does not restrict you from charging or acting normally, but as a drawback, you have to take a test. You set your models up, then you roll 2d6 and subtract 1 for each enemy model within 9 inches of yours. This can, of course, lead to very risky deep strikes, because if you roll low, you suffer things like battle shock, so you can't use stratagems. But also, if you roll a 1 or less, you get a deep strike mishap, which is really bad, because it has things that vary from taking d6 mortal wounds, which is obviously pretty painful, especially for things like Eldar. But there's also a rule that would have you go back into reserve, and you can't come in this turn, which could really throw off your plans. And then also have ones that mean you're battle shocked, and you can't shoot, and you can't charge. So, like, it really can backfire, which I think is, perfectly valid. This would be a very powerful option. You can only use it once per turn, but you run the risk of just getting obliterated by being too greedy with it. And you'd, of course, still have regular Deep Strike. This would just be something to add extra variety to Deep Strike, which I think would be great. And I think it would just be very fun. Do I think they're going to add it? No. Should they? I think so. Probably not one that everyone's going to agree with, but I think it would just add a lot of extra fun, especially for armies that use a lot of Deep Strike, Custodes or Grey Knights, for example. Who are all about deep striking. Or not all about, but all have deep strike, and so on and so forth. Now, there are some, I'm sure people are wondering, oh, why not these things? First up, pointed war gear. I think it is kind of 6 dozen of one, half dozen of the other when it comes to pointed war gear versus free war gear. With pointed war gear, there are many units where you just never bring their gear because there was no point, it was just extra points, and you don't want that. And with free war gear, you always bring the gear, unless it is, you just don't care, because it's a unit that isn't really going to make a difference if they have the gear or not. I think, again, it's just kind of two different ways of doing it. I don't think one's better or worse than the other. Personally, I prefer free war gear because it lets me equip things more free and wild. The other being pointed models, and this one I think should come back for no other reason than it just allows for a little bit more player creativity. That's really the only reason. I know, Repentia were sometimes running 7s, and I would say Sanguinary Guard, but they're a 6-man unit now, so probably wouldn't see that. Anyways, in terms of other ones, I'd like to see combi weapons get a special rule. I made a video on that a long time ago where you select what anti-keyword they get when you include a unit of combi weapons in your army, because I think that would just work quite well if they want to keep the combi weapons consolidated, which I think can work just fine. Anyways, I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and insult my modded Factorio world in the comments below. Bye-bye.